There is a stretch of national park wilderness where disappearances keep repeating, and officials rarely explain why. Skilled hikers walk in prepared, confident, and on marked trails. Hours later, they're gone. Phones cut out, tracks vanish, search teams come back empty. Maps now show the same corridor appearing in case after case. No warning signs, no public alerts. Why is this place being avoided in silence? And what keeps happening inside it? The corridor trails that rangers keep updating. In Grand Canyon National Park, the term corridor trails has a specific meaning. The park uses it for the main maintained routes that carry most foot traffic between the rims and the inner canyon. On the south rim, the Bright Angel Trail and the South Kaibab Trail form the common descent lines. On the north rim, the North Kaibab Trail continues the same corridor toward Phantom Ranch. The label appears in park notices because these trails hold the densest use and the highest need for timely updates. From the rim, the corridor can look controlled. The first miles are engineered, signed, and familiar to many visitors. Farther down, the canyon behaves like a stacked set of climates rather than a single landscape. The park's key hiking messages page states that temperature increases about 5.5 degrees Fahrenheit with each 1,000 feet of elevation lost. And it notes that summer highs at Phantom Ranch can average about 30 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than on the rims. Those statements sit beside updates that are more immediate. In a winter hazard entry dated Tuesday, January 27, the park described inner canyon trails as snow-packed and icy, with the upper 2 miles of the South Kaibab and Bright Angel trails singled out. The entry recommended foot traction and trekking poles. It read like a surface report, written to be checked and then checked again before a descent. The clearest instruction arrives during heat. On the 5th of June, 2024, Grand Canyon National Park issued a summer safety news release tied to a National Weather Service excessive heat warning. It gave a specific window from 8 a.m. Thursday, June 6 to 8 p.m. Friday, June 7, and it applied the warning to areas below 4,000 feet, including Phantom Ranch and Havasupai Gardens. Forecast temperatures in the shade were listed between 105 degrees Fahrenheit and 111 degrees Fahrenheit. The park recommended not hiking below the rim during the warning. That release also put rescue capacity into the record. It noted that efforts to assist hikers may be delayed during summer because of limited staff, the number of rescue calls, employee safety requirements, and limited helicopter flying capability during periods of extreme heat or inclement weather. The line was not framed as a threat. It was a statement of how response works when conditions and resources do not match. In the corridor, closures are described by endpoints and dates rather than broad warnings. On the key hiking messages page, an ongoing closures section lists conditions effective as of the 3rd of February 2026. It states that the Plateau Point Trail is closed from the Tonto Trail Junction to Plateau Point through the 30th of June 2026. It lists the River Trail east of River Rest House closed to the South Kaibab Trail Junction through the 30th of June 2026. And it states that the Silver Bridge remains closed through the 30th of June 2026. The same update shows what remains open, and it does so in segments. It lists the South Kaibab Trail open from the South Kaibab Trailhead to Phantom Ranch. It lists the Bright Angel Trail open from the Bright Angel Trailhead to River Rest House. It also lists Phantom Ranch, Bright Angel Campground, and the North Kaibab Trail from Phantom Ranch to the Clear Creek Trail Junction as open. A separate line explains that a lower section of the North Kaibab from the Clear Creek Trail Junction to the Lower Ribbon Falls turnoff is scheduled to reopen on Wednesday, the 4th of March 2026. Water is treated as a variable, not a promise. The park states that water statuses for the corridor trails can change suddenly due to breaks in the water line and it advises day and overnight hikers to carry water treatment options. In the same status list, some locations are marked water on, others water off, including items winterized for the season and places affected by closures. In that February 2026 snapshot, the South Kaibab trailhead is listed as off due to a water pipeline break. A different kind of disruption comes after fire, when the landscape changes how it holds and releases water. On the 3rd of February 2026, KSL reported reopening plans around the Grand Canyon's North Rim after the White Sage and Dragon Bravo fires in 2025, stating that the two fires together scorched over 200,000 acres. The report described a planned reopening of a North Kaibab trail segment on the 4th of March 2026, while noting that parts of the trail north of Ribbon Falls would remain closed until conditions and maintenance are reviewed. The same report tied the corridor to flash flooding risk in practical terms. It said visitors should monitor weather because of an elevated risk of flash flooding near the fire's burn scar, and it reported that about a dozen watersheds draining into the Colorado River were affected. It described new stream and precipitation gauges installed in the Bright Angel Creek area and said park officials created a new evacuation and alert plan for the North Kaibab Trail corridor and the Phantom Ranch area. It also reported that some permit holders and reservation holders would receive advance notifications, and it encouraged others to sign up for flooding alerts. Across these notices, the corridor is not framed as a puzzle. It is framed as a managed route through a place that resists simple planning. The same page that lists closures and water availability also mentions stock use on inner canyon corridor trails and notes that rock slides and washouts have, at times, made trails impassable to stock. The corridor can be maintained and still be interrupted by surface ice, failed pipes, rockfall, and changed drainage. The warnings that lead some hikers to avoid parts of the corridor are built from this accumulation of specific, dated information. A heat bulletin with a 2-day window and a temperature range. A winter update describing 2 miles of ice. A bridge closure with an end date. A reopening scheduled for a particular Wednesday, paired with a reminder that burned watersheds can raise the odds of sudden flooding. The corridor is defined as much by what is posted at the moment as by the trail on the ground. The closures with exact endpoints. In Grand Canyon National Park, trail closures along the corridor are described with fixed geographic markers. They are written in terms of junctions, bridges, rest houses, and campsites. A closure rarely applies to an entire trail. Instead, it is defined by 2 named locations and an effective period. These descriptions appear on the park's key hiking messages page and are updated as conditions change. On the 3rd of February 2026, the park listed the Plateau Point Trail as closed from the Tonto Trail Junction to Plateau Point through the 30th of June 2026. The notice did not describe the physical condition of the trail in detail. It did not reference erosion, instability, or risk. It only specified the affected segment and the date through which the closure would remain in effect. The same format appears in other corridor restrictions. In the same update, the river trail east of River Rest House was listed as closed to the South Kaibab Trail Junction through the 30th of June 2026. This section runs parallel to the Colorado River and connects the Bright Angel Trail area to the lower portion of the South Kaibab Trail. Hikers traveling between those 2 routes are required to reroute when this segment is closed. The closure notice does not provide alternative paths. It assumes the reader understands the trail network. The Silver Bridge closure was also listed through the 30th of June to 2026. The Silver Bridge is one of 2 pedestrian bridges that cross the Colorado River near Phantom Ranch. When it is closed, foot traffic must use the Black Bridge upstream. The The closure affects both day hikers and overnight users. It also affects park staff, mule trains, and maintenance crews who move through the area. These bridge closures are often tied to infrastructure projects. The National Park Service periodically replaces decking, cables, and support components. In some cases, closures are connected to waterline replacement projects, since major pipelines follow the same corridor routes. Public notices rarely combine these details into a single explanation. Instead, they appear as separate updates. Open segments are listed alongside closed ones. On the same February 2026 page, the park stated that the Bright Angel Trail was open from the Bright Angel Trailhead to River Rest House. River Rest House sits approximately halfway between the rim and the river. Below that point, access was limited by the river trail closure and bridge restrictions. This meant that hikers could descend partway, but could not complete the full route using Bright Angel alone. The South Kaibab Trail was listed as open from its trailhead to Phantom Ranch. Unlike Bright Angel, South Kaibab has no water stations and fewer shaded rest areas. Even when fully open, it is subject to seasonal advisories. During partial closures elsewhere, it sometimes becomes the only direct rim-to-river route available to the public. The North Kaibab Trail status was divided into sections. In early 2026, the park listed it as open from Phantom Ranch to the Clear Creek Trail Junction. Beyond that point, toward Ribbon Falls and the North Rim, portions were scheduled for reopening on the 4th of March 2026. The reopening date was presented as a plan rather than a guarantee. It reflected maintenance progress and post-fire assessments. These segmented notices are common after major environmental events. In 2025, the White Sage Fire and Dragon Bravo Fire burned large areas north of the Colorado River. According to reports from Utah-based outlet KSL in February 2026, more than 200,000 acres were affected. Portions of the North Kaibab corridor passed through burned watersheds. After the fires, erosion patterns and drainage behavior changed. As a result, reopening decisions were made section by section. Some stretches were cleared and stabilized earlier than others. Others required continued inspection. The park installed additional stream gauges and rainfall monitors near Bright Angel Creek to track runoff. Closure boundaries reflected these monitoring zones. When flash flooding risk increases, closures can be imposed with little advance notice. In burned areas, soil often becomes less absorbent. Rainwater runs off more quickly and collects in narrow drainages. In the inner canyon, this can lead to sudden rises in creek levels. In past incidents, water levels have risen several feet within minutes. These risks are addressed through targeted restrictions rather than blanket bans. A corridor segment near a drainage may close temporarily, while adjacent portions remain open. Notices specify the creek crossing or drainage basin involved. They often refer to affected watersheds rather than entire trails. Maintenance work also leads to precise closures. Waterline repairs are a frequent cause. The main Trans-Canyon pipeline carries potable water from the North Rim to the South Rim and to inner canyon facilities. Breaks have occurred at multiple points along Bright Angel and North Kaibab. When a section fails, crews must excavate and repair it, sometimes using helicopters to transport materials. During these projects, foot traffic is limited in the immediate area. The closure boundaries are usually set to keep hikers away from equipment and unstable ground. The park posts the affected mile markers or junctions. In February 2026, the South Kaibab Trailhead water system was listed as off due to a pipeline break, even though the trail itself remained open. Construction-related closures can last for weeks or months. Timelines depend on weather, supply delivery, and staffing. Updates often include tentative end dates, which are later revised. These changes are reflected in the weekly or bi-weekly message updates. Winter weather produces another category of endpoint-based restrictions. When snow and ice accumulate near the rims, only the upper sections of trails are affected. In January 2024 and January 2025, the park issued advisories noting that the top 2 miles of Bright Angel and South Kaibab were icy. The rest of the trails remained dry. The closure, in these cases, applied only to unprepared hikers. The trails were not formally closed, but were marked as hazardous. In some seasons, the park closes specific rest areas. Havasupai Gardens, formerly known as Indian Garden, is a major rest and water stop along Bright Angel. During infrastructure upgrades, it has been closed overnight or during daytime hours. Notices list the closure window and the limits on camping and water access. Backcountry permit regulations are adjusted to match these conditions. When a corridor segment closes, associated campsites and use areas may be suspended. Permit holders are contacted if their itinerary crosses a restricted zone. In flood-prone seasons, some reservations are delayed until weather forecasts stabilize. The structure of these closure notices reflects how the corridor is managed. Each junction, bridge, and facility functions as a reference point. Updates are built around those points. Rather than describing the canyon as a continuous space, the system treats it as a chain of segments. This approach allows flexibility. One part can reopen while another remains restricted. It also requires hikers to interpret multiple notices at once. A route may be open in principle, but blocked in practice by a bridge closure, a water outage, or a fire-related restriction. Over time, these exact endpoints become familiar to frequent visitors. Names like River Rest House, Plateau Point, and Clear Creek Junction appear repeatedly in updates. They serve as anchors for changing conditions. The corridor is navigated not only by foot, but by reference to these administrative boundaries. Heat bulletins and temperature thresholds. In the Grand Canyon corridor, heat warnings are issued using defined elevation levels, forecast ranges, and time windows. These notices are published through National Park Service news releases, website updates, and visitor center postings. They are coordinated with National Weather Service advisories and are adjusted as forecasts change. The language used in these bulletins is standardized and focused on measurable conditions. One commonly referenced threshold is 4,000 feet above sea level. Areas below this elevation include Phantom Ranch, Bright Angel Campground, Havasupai Gardens, and much of the Inner Canyon corridor. When forecasts indicate extreme heat at these levels, warnings are typically applied only to zones beneath that boundary. Rim areas, which sit between 6,800 and 8,200 feet, are usually excluded from the same advisories. On the 5th of June 2024, Grand Canyon National Park issued a summer safety release in response to an excessive heat warning. The notice specified that the warning would be in effect from 8 a.m. on June 6 until 8 p.m. on June 7. It stated that temperatures in the shade below 4,000 feet were expected to reach between 105 and 111 degrees Fahrenheit. The release advised visitors not to hike below the rim during that period. Similar releases appear each summer, usually between late May and early September. They are timed to coincide with prolonged high-pressure systems over the southwest. These systems produce clear skies, low humidity, and sustained heat. When daily highs exceed seasonal averages by a significant margin, heat advisories are issued. The park's public guidance includes information on temperature gradients. According to National Park Service materials, temperatures in the canyon increase by approximately 5.5 degrees Fahrenheit for every 1,000 feet of elevation loss. This means that a day with an 80-degree temperature on the south rim can correspond to conditions exceeding 100 degrees at Phantom Ranch. These differences are emphasized in safety messaging. Bulletins also identify specific facilities affected by heat. Phantom Ranch is frequently mentioned because it sits near the lowest point of the main corridor routes. Havasupai Gardens is often included because it serves as a midpoint rest area. During extreme heat events, these locations may experience daytime temperatures above 100 degrees, even when rim temperatures remain moderate. In addition to maximum temperatures, overnight lows are included in some advisories. When nighttime temperatures remain above 80 degrees, the risk of heat-related illness increases. The lack of cooling prevents the body from recovering after daytime exertion. In these cases, warnings may be extended for multiple consecutive days. Heat bulletins typically include operational details. They often state that search and rescue responses may be delayed due to limited helicopter availability during high temperatures. Aircraft performance decreases in hot, thin air. This affects lifting capacity and flight safety. As a result, some rescues must wait until early morning or evening. The releases also note staffing constraints. Summer months bring increased visitor numbers and higher incident rates. Ranger and medical staff may already be engaged in ongoing operations. Heat advisories acknowledge that response times may be longer under these conditions. During major heat events, the park may modify access to certain services. Mule rides, ranger-led programs, and maintenance work in the inner canyon are sometimes reduced or suspended. These changes are announced separately but are often referenced in safety notices. Water availability is a recurring element in heat-related communications. The Trans-Canyon Waterline supplies potable water to corridor rest houses and campgrounds. Breaks are more frequent in summer due to thermal expansion and increased usage. When outages occur during heat waves, the risk profile changes significantly. For example, in several summers between 2019 and 2025, pipeline failures temporarily shut off water at key points such as Havasupai Gardens and 3 Mile Rest House. During these periods, the park advised hikers to carry additional water and reconsider rim-to-river travel. These advisories were issued through separate infrastructure updates, but were linked to heat warnings. The National Weather Service provides the primary meteorological data for these bulletins. Forecast offices in Flagstaff and Phoenix monitor regional conditions and issue excessive heat warnings when criteria are met. These criteria include forecast temperatures, duration, and nighttime recovery. The park aligns its messaging with these alerts. Time windows in heat advisories are usually defined to the hour. A typical notice might state that conditions will be hazardous between mid-morning and late evening. This reflects the period when solar radiation and ambient temperatures are highest. Early morning hours are often excluded, although the park does not generally encourage nighttime hiking. In some cases, the park closes inner canyon trails during extreme heat. These closures are rare and are usually limited to specific segments. More often, the park issues strong advisories against travel rather than formal bans. The distinction is maintained in official language. Notices may state that hiking is not recommended rather than prohibited. Heat-related incidents are documented in annual reports and news releases. Between 2004 and 2023, multiple fatalities and hospitalizations were attributed to heat illness in the canyon. These incidents typically occurred during summer months and involved dehydration, heat exhaustion, and heat stroke. Victims included both first-time visitors and experienced hikers. Publicly released summaries often include basic information such as age, nationality, and location. For example, several reports in July and August of various years describe hikers found unconscious near River Rest House or along the South Kaibab Trail. These reports do not include detailed medical records. They serve as records of occurrence rather than analysis. In response to these incidents, the park refined its messaging. By the late 2010s, safety materials began emphasizing "down is optional, up is mandatory," a phrase used to highlight the difficulty of uphill travel in heat. This language appears in brochures, website pages, and visitor center displays. Temperature thresholds are also tied to permit policies. During prolonged heat events, the park may delay the release of certain backcountry permits. Group sizes may be restricted in inner canyon zones. These adjustments are communicated through the backcountry office and are reflected in online reservation systems. The heat bulletin system is integrated with signage inside the park. Electronic message boards near trailheads display current warnings. Printed notices are posted at permit offices and shuttle stops. These postings are updated as new forecasts arrive. Trailhead signage often includes thermometers and heat risk charts. At the South Kaibab and Bright Angel trailheads, visitors can see real-time rim temperatures alongside projected inner canyon values. These displays are intended to provide immediate context for conditions below. In years with prolonged drought, heat advisories may be more frequent. Reduced soil moisture and sparse vegetation increase surface temperatures. In combination with high-pressure systems, this leads to extended periods of extreme heat. From 2020 through 2024, the Southwest experienced multiple summers with above-average temperatures, reflected in the frequency of canyon warnings. The structure of these bulletins remains consistent. Each includes the effective dates and times, the affected elevation zones, expected temperature ranges, operational impacts, and general safety guidance. The format allows visitors to compare current conditions with previous advisories. Over time, these notices form a record of seasonal patterns. Summer heat warnings recur with similar language and thresholds. What changes are the specific dates, forecast values, and infrastructure conditions. The corridor's exposure to heat is managed through this system of recurring data-based updates. Water systems and pipeline failures. The Grand Canyon Corridor relies on a single primary potable water system known as the Trans-Canyon Waterline. This pipeline transports water from Roaring Springs on the North Rim to facilities on both rims and within the Inner Canyon. It supplies Phantom Ranch, Bright Angel Campground, Havasupai Gardens, rest houses, ranger stations, and visitor services. The system has operated in various forms since the mid-20th century and remains the park's main water infrastructure. Water from Roaring Springs is collected through a series of tunnels and diversion structures. It then enters the pipeline near the North Kaibab Trail. From there, it descends more than 3,000 feet into the canyon, crosses the Colorado River, and climbs toward the South Rim. Along this route, the pipeline follows corridor trails and is anchored to canyon walls, buried under trail surfaces, or suspended across drainage channels. Much of the current waterline was installed between the 1960s and 1970s. Large sections consist of steel and cast iron pipe. Over time, these materials have been exposed to temperature extremes, mineral deposits, corrosion, and physical stress. Seasonal expansion and contraction weaken joints and fittings. Rockfall and flash flooding can also damage exposed sections. According to National Park Service maintenance reports and public infrastructure updates, the pipeline experiences multiple failures each year. Between 2010 and 2024, dozens of breaks were recorded. Some years included more than 10 major repair events. These failures ranged from small leaks to full ruptures requiring extended closures. One widely reported incident occurred in July 2022, when a major break near Phantom Ranch interrupted water service to Inner Canyon facilities for several weeks. Water had to be flown in by helicopter and transported by mule. Temporary water stations were installed at limited locations. Campground capacities were reduced during the outage. Similar disruptions occurred in 2019, 2020, and 2023. In August 2023, the park announced that multiple breaks had occurred in close succession along the Bright Angel section. Repair crews worked continuously in high temperatures. Some repairs required temporary trail closures to allow equipment access. The pipeline's location complicates repairs. Many sections are only accessible by foot, mule, or helicopter. Replacement pipe segments must be transported into the canyon in stages. In narrow areas, crews must work from suspended platforms or temporary scaffolding. Weather conditions frequently delay these operations. When a break is detected, water pressure is reduced or shut off entirely in affected zones. The park then issues water status updates through its key hiking messages page. Each water station is marked as on, off, or seasonal. These statuses are updated as repairs progress. For example, in February 2026, the South Kaibab trailhead was listed as having water turned off due to a pipeline break. At the same time, water was available at Phantom Ranch and Bright Angel Campground. This meant that hikers starting on South Kaibab could not refill before descending. Water outages affect multiple operational systems. Restrooms, kitchens, lodging facilities, and maintenance shops depend on the same supply. During prolonged outages, Phantom Ranch limits overnight stays and meal services. Laundry and cleaning schedules are reduced. Staff housing is also affected. Emergency water caches are maintained in some locations. These are intended for short-term use and are not sufficient for large visitor volumes. When outages extend beyond several days, water must be delivered by helicopter or mule trains. These operations require coordination with flight schedules and weather conditions. In response to repeated failures, the National Park Service initiated a comprehensive waterline replacement project. Planning documents released in the early 2020s outlined a phased replacement of the aging pipeline. The project involves installing new high-density polyethylene and stainless steel segments. Construction began in stages between 2022 and 2024. Work zones were established along Bright Angel and North Kaibab. Temporary bypass lines were installed in some areas to maintain partial service. These construction activities led to periodic trail and facility closures. The replacement project is scheduled to continue through the late 2020s. According to park announcements, full system modernization may take more than a decade. Funding comes from federal infrastructure programs and park-specific allocations. Cost estimates exceed several $100 million. During construction, water availability becomes more variable. Sections under active replacement are more likely to experience shutdowns. Notices often specify whether outages are planned or unplanned. Planned outages are usually announced several days in advance. Unplanned breaks are reported as soon as they are confirmed. Water treatment is also addressed in corridor guidance. The park advises hikers to carry water purification methods, especially during outage periods. Natural water sources such as Bright Angel Creek and Garden Creek are not consistently safe for direct consumption. Seasonal runoff, wildlife activity, and sediment affect water quality. Maintenance records show that winter conditions also contribute to failures. Freezing temperatures near the rims can cause pipe cracking. Ice accumulation may shift exposed segments. In January and February, crews often monitor vulnerable sections closely and perform preventative drainage. The pipeline's crossing of the Colorado River is another critical point. Specialized supports and anchoring systems hold the line in place. Inspections are conducted regularly. During periods of high river flow, additional monitoring is required. Pipeline status influences permit decisions and visitor advisories. When multiple water stations are offline, the backcountry office may restrict corridor permits. Day hikers are advised to limit travel distances. Rangers at trailheads provide updated information based on current supply conditions. Historical records show that water availability has shaped corridor use since early development. Before the modern pipeline, water had to be hauled manually or collected from springs. Early tourist facilities were limited by supply. The current system expanded access, but also created dependency on centralized infrastructure. Annual visitation statistics reflect the impact of major outages. In years with extended water disruptions, overnight stays at Phantom Ranch decrease. Mule ride schedules are adjusted. Some guided programs are suspended. The pipeline is documented in engineering reports, environmental assessments, and congressional funding proposals. These documents describe its age, vulnerability, and replacement priorities. They also outline long-term goals for reliability and redundancy. Despite modernization efforts, the corridor remains dependent on a single main supply route. Secondary backup systems are limited. As a result, water status remains a central element of daily operations and safety messaging. Pipeline failures are treated as infrastructure events rather than emergencies unless combined with heat, injury, or flooding. Notices focus on service availability and repair progress. They do not include projections beyond stated timelines. Over time, water system updates have become a routine part of corridor communication. Visitors planning multi-day trips are advised to check these updates repeatedly. Conditions can change within days or hours. The structure of these notices mirrors other corridor advisories. Each identifies the affected segment, the current status, and the expected restoration window. Together, they form a continuously updated record of the corridor's operational limits, wildfire scars, and flood monitoring zones. Wildfires have become a recurring influence on corridor management in Grand Canyon National Park. When large fires burn in watersheds that drain toward the Colorado River, they change how rainwater moves across the landscape. Vegetation loss, soil alteration, and debris accumulation affect runoff patterns. These changes are tracked through monitoring systems and reflected in trail advisories. Two major fires in 2025, the White Sage Fire and the Dragon Bravo Fire, burned extensive areas north of the Colorado River. According to reports released in early 2026, the combined burn area exceeded 200,000 acres. Portions of the North Kaibab drainage, including tributaries feeding Bright Angel Creek, were affected. Several sections of the corridor pass through or below these burned zones. After a wildfire, soil often becomes hydrophobic. Heat alters organic compounds in the ground, creating layers that repel water. Instead of soaking into the soil, rainfall flows rapidly across the surface. This increases the speed and volume of runoff, entering creeks and side canyons. In narrow drainages, water levels can rise quickly. In response to these conditions, the National Park Service designates flood monitoring zones. These zones correspond to specific watersheds and creek systems. In the corridor, the most closely monitored areas include Bright Angel Creek, Garden Creek, and tributaries near Ribbon Falls. These waterways intersect with major trail segments and infrastructure. Following the 2025 fires, the park installed additional stream gauges and precipitation sensors. These instruments measure rainfall intensity, creek depth, and flow rates. Data is transmitted in near real time to park operations centers. When readings exceed preset thresholds, alerts are issued internally and, in some cases, to the public. KSL reported in February 2026 that new gauges had been placed in the Bright Angel Creek area as part of a revised flood warning system. The report stated that approximately a dozen watersheds feeding into the Colorado River were under enhanced monitoring. It also noted that a new evacuation and alert plan had been developed for the North Kaibab Corridor and Phantom Ranch. Flood risk in burned areas differs from risk in unburned terrain. In intact forests, vegetation slows water movement and stabilizes soil. After fire, slopes may shed rocks, ash, and tree debris. This material can form temporary dams in side channels. When these dams fail, sudden surges occur downstream. In the inner canyon, such surges can affect bridges, campsites, and trail crossings. The river trail, portions of Bright Angel, and lower sections of North Kaibab are particularly exposed. These routes often follow creek banks or cross-drainage channels. During flash floods, water can overtop trails and erode tread surfaces. Historical records show that flooding has periodically disrupted corridor travel. In September 2004, a major storm system caused widespread flooding in the canyon. Trails were damaged, bridges were buried in sediment, and Phantom Ranch was temporarily isolated. Subsequent repairs took several months. Similar, smaller-scale events occurred in 2010, 2018, and 2021. After the 2025 fires, park hydrologists conducted watershed assessments. These studies mapped burn severity, slope gradients, and soil conditions. Areas with high burn intensity and steep slopes were classified as high-risk zones. Closure boundaries and reopening schedules were adjusted based on these findings. For example, in early 2026, portions of the North Kaibab Trail north of Ribbon Falls remained closed even after other sections reopened. Maintenance crews cited unstable slopes and increased debris flow risk. The reopening date of the 4th of March 2026 applied only to segments that had passed inspection. Flood monitoring zones are integrated into daily operations. Rangers assigned to inner canyon districts review rainfall forecasts and gauge data each morning. During monsoon season, typically from July through September, this monitoring intensifies. Afternoon thunderstorms are common during this period and can develop rapidly. When heavy rainfall is forecast over burned areas, advisories may be issued. These notices sometimes recommend avoiding creek crossings or delaying travel through specific sections. In more severe cases, temporary closures are enacted. These closures are often short-term, lasting hours or days rather than weeks. Phantom Ranch is a central concern in flood planning. Located near Bright Angel Creek and close to the Colorado River, it sits downstream from several burned watersheds. During high-risk periods, staff review evacuation procedures and communication protocols. Guests may be advised to remain in place until conditions stabilize. The park's alert system includes multiple channels. Weather radios, satellite phones, ranger briefings, and online updates are used to share information. Some visitors receive notifications through reservation systems, especially if they hold permits for affected zones. Others are encouraged to subscribe to regional flood alert services. Infrastructure within flood zones is designed with some flexibility. Bridges are built to allow water and debris to pass beneath them. Trail retaining walls include drainage openings. However, extreme events can overwhelm these features. Post-flood inspections are required before reopening affected segments. After major rainfall, maintenance teams survey the corridor on foot. They document washouts, undercut sections, and debris accumulation. Photographs and measurements are recorded. This information is used to determine whether repairs can be completed quickly or require extended closures. Sediment deposition is another long-term effect of post-fire flooding. Ash and soil transported downstream can alter creek beds and riverbanks. Over time, this changes flow patterns. Some crossings that were previously stable become more vulnerable. These changes are incorporated into future management plans. Environmental assessments prepared after the 2025 fires noted that increased sediment loads could persist for several years. Vegetation recovery in high elevation zones may take a decade or more. Until plant cover returns, runoff behavior remains altered. Monitoring systems are therefore maintained long after flames are extinguished. Flood monitoring also influences backcountry permitting. During high-risk periods, the backcountry office may limit permits for zones near affected drainages. Group sizes may be reduced and itineraries may be rerouted. These adjustments are communicated through reservation platforms and ranger stations. Research institutions occasionally collaborate with the park on hydrology studies. Universities and federal agencies analyze data from canyon gauges to improve predictive models. These studies help refine alert thresholds and response procedures. Findings are published in technical reports and environmental journals. Visitors encounter flood-related information at trailheads and visitor centers. Posted notices may list recent rainfall, creek conditions, and restricted areas. During monsoon season, daily updates are common. Rangers also provide verbal briefings to hikers beginning long descents. Over time, wildfire scars and flood zones become part of the corridor's administrative landscape. Names of burned watersheds appear in internal reports and public notices. These designations guide maintenance schedules, staffing assignments, and emergency planning. The system does not aim to eliminate flood risk. Instead, it documents and manages it. Monitoring, assessment, and targeted closures are used to reduce exposure. Conditions are reviewed continuously as landscapes recover and weather patterns shift. The corridor's vulnerability to flooding reflects broader environmental trends. Increased wildfire frequency and changing precipitation patterns affect drainage behavior. Park records from the past 2 decades show a gradual rise in fire-related closures and flood advisories. Each monitoring zone represents a specific interaction between terrain, vegetation, and climate. These interactions are tracked through instruments and field surveys. The resulting data shapes daily access decisions. Through this process, wildfire scars remain relevant long after visible damage fades. Burn boundaries may be mapped for years. Their influence persists in runoff measurements and closure notices. The corridor is managed with these long-term effects in view: rescue limits and response delays. Search and rescue operations in the Grand Canyon corridor are managed by the National Park Service in coordination with regional emergency agencies. These operations are handled by trained park rangers, medical staff, aviation crews, and support personnel. Most rescues occur along the Bright Angel, South Kaibab, and North Kaibab trails, where visitor traffic is highest. According to National Park Service records, the Grand Canyon averages more than 300 search and rescue incidents each year. These incidents include heat illness, dehydration, cardiac events, falls, broken limbs, and disorientation. A majority occur between May and September, when temperatures and visitor numbers increase. Rescue responses are influenced by terrain. Much of the corridor lies thousands of feet below the rim. Steep slopes, narrow paths, and limited access routes restrict vehicle use. In most cases, injured hikers must be reached on foot by rangers carrying medical equipment. This process can take several hours. Helicopters are used when conditions allow. The park operates under strict aviation safety guidelines. High temperatures, low air density, strong winds, and limited landing zones affect flight operations. During summer heat waves, helicopter lifting capacity is reduced. This limits the weight of equipment and patients that can be transported. National Park Service summer safety releases regularly note that rescue efforts may be delayed due to heat, weather, and staffing limitations. A June 2024 advisory stated that helicopter flights may be restricted during extreme heat and storms. It also noted that multiple simultaneous incidents can exceed available resources. Nighttime operations are also limited. While some rescues occur after dark, visibility and terrain hazards increase risk for responders. Headlamps and portable lighting are used, but navigation remains difficult. In many cases, evacuation is postponed until daylight. Response times vary depending on location. Incidents near trailheads or major rest areas are usually reached more quickly. Emergencies deep in the canyon near Phantom Ranch or along remote sections of North Kaibab take longer. Reaching some locations may require hiking 10 or more miles. When helicopters cannot land near an injured hiker, long-line rescues may be used. In these operations, a rescuer and patient are suspended beneath the aircraft by a cable. These procedures require specialized training and stable weather. They are not performed during high winds, storms, or extreme heat. Medical care in the field is limited. Rangers carry basic life support equipment, including oxygen, intravenous fluids, splints, and monitoring devices. Advanced treatment is usually not available until the patient reaches a RIM medical facility or is transferred to an external hospital. Phantom Ranch includes a small clinic space used for initial treatment. However, it is not equipped for intensive care. During major incidents, patients are stabilized and prepared for evacuation. In some cases, overnight shelter is required while waiting for transport. Staffing levels affect response capacity. During peak season, more rangers are assigned to inner canyon districts. Even so, personnel are distributed across large areas. When multiple rescues occur at once, response times increase. In annual reports, the park notes that fatigue and heat stress also affect rescuers. Rangers often hike long distances while carrying heavy gear. During summer, temperatures along the corridor can exceed 100 degrees. Work rest cycles are enforced to prevent injury to staff. Rescue operations are documented through incident reports. These reports include time of call, location, nature of injury, resources used, and outcome. Summaries are sometimes released to the public through news statements. Details are limited to protect privacy. Between 2010 and 2023, multiple fatal incidents were recorded each year. Causes included heat stroke, cardiac arrest, falls, and accidental drowning. Many victims had begun their hikes during daytime heat or underestimated travel times. In July 2021, a widely reported case involved a hiker who collapsed near River Rest House. Temperatures exceeded 100 degrees. Rangers reached the individual after several hours, but resuscitation was unsuccessful. Similar incidents were reported in subsequent summers. Response delays are not always caused by distance. Weather can halt operations. Thunderstorms, lightning, and flash flooding make some areas inaccessible. During monsoon season, rescue teams may wait for water levels to recede before proceeding. Wildfire smoke also affects aviation. Reduced visibility can ground helicopters. During the 2025 fire season, some rescue flights were postponed due to smoke conditions north of the river. Communication limitations contribute to delays. Cell phone coverage is unreliable in most of the canyon. Emergency calls are often placed from limited reception points near the rims. In some cases, hikers must travel several miles to report an incident. The park uses radio repeaters and satellite phones to coordinate operations. However, terrain can interfere with signals. Backup communication plans are maintained for critical zones. Visitors are advised to carry emergency signaling devices, such as satellite messengers. These devices can transmit distress signals directly to rescue coordination centers. Use of such devices has increased since 2018 and has improved notification times in some cases. Despite this, early notification does not guarantee rapid evacuation. Once an alert is received, teams must still travel to the site. Logistics, weather, and staffing determine the pace of response. Costs associated with rescues are absorbed by the National Park Service. The park does not charge individuals for most rescue operations. Annual budgets include allocations for training, equipment, and aviation support. Training programs emphasize self-sufficiency and risk prevention. Rangers conduct public education on heat management, hydration, and pacing. These programs aim to reduce incident rates rather than increase response capacity. Search and rescue planning is integrated into corridor management. Daily briefings include weather forecasts, visitor counts, and known hazards. High-risk days receive additional staffing when possible. Records show that the majority of rescues involve visitors who underestimated heat, distance, or elevation change. Many incidents occur within 3 miles of the rim, where hikers may turn around too late. The structure of the rescue system reflects environmental limits. Terrain, climate, and infrastructure shape what is possible. Operations are designed around these constraints. Response delays are documented in official communications as operational realities. They are not presented as failures. Instead, they are described as outcomes of conditions and resource availability. Over time, these records form a consistent pattern. Seasonal peaks, environmental barriers, and logistical challenges recur. The corridor remains a setting where assistance exists but cannot be immediate. Incident records and public reporting systems. In the Grand Canyon corridor, accidents and medical emergencies are documented through a standardized reporting process. When an incident occurs, responding rangers complete an initial field report. This document records the time of notification, location, nature of the incident, personnel involved, and immediate actions taken. These reports are entered into internal National Park Service databases used for operational tracking and review. Each incident is assigned a reference number. This number links field notes, radio logs, medical assessments, and transportation records. The system allows administrators to review response timelines and resource use. It also supports long-term statistical analysis of accident patterns. Public information is derived from these internal records. The park's Public Affairs Office issues news releases for serious injuries, fatalities, or large-scale rescue operations. These statements usually include basic details such as age range, general location, date, and cause of death or injury. Personal names are often withheld until next of kin are notified. For example, summer incident releases frequently describe hikers found unresponsive near River Rest House along the South Kaibab Trail or near Phantom Ranch. Causes listed in these statements commonly include heat-related illness, cardiac events, and falls. Medical specifics are not provided. The language remains limited to confirmed observations. Annual summaries are also prepared. These reports compile incident totals by category, including heat illness, dehydration, trauma, and missing persons. They are used internally and sometimes referenced in public safety materials. Some data is released through Freedom of Information Act requests or academic studies. Search and rescue statistics are published periodically. These summaries list the number of missions, average response times, and general outcomes. They do not include detailed narratives of individual cases. Instead, they present aggregated figures for planning and evaluation purposes. Media organizations rely on park releases and law enforcement briefings. Local and regional outlets in Arizona and Utah regularly report on major canyon incidents. Articles typically restate information provided by the National Park Service and include brief statements from park officials. Independent investigation is uncommon due to access limitations. In some cases, family members release additional details. After fatalities, relatives may share information through interviews or social media. These accounts sometimes clarify medical histories, travel plans, or timeline details. Such information does not become part of official park records unless relevant to investigations. Incident documentation also includes preventative reporting. Rangers record near-miss events, heat exhaustion cases treated on site, and voluntary evacuations. These records are used to identify emerging risks. For example, clusters of heat-related assists along a specific trail section may prompt new signage or advisories. Missing person cases follow a separate documentation process. When a hiker is reported overdue, a missing person file is opened. This file contains itinerary details, permit information, witness statements, and search area maps. Updates are released publicly only when searches become prolonged or involve large resources. The park maintains cooperation agreements with county sheriffs and medical examiners. Fatalities are investigated under state jurisdiction. Autopsy results and official death certificates are handled by county offices. The National Park Service references these findings in its records, but does not publish them in full. Digital archiving has expanded access to historical incident data. Many reports from the 1990s and early 2000s have been digitized. Researchers studying outdoor risk patterns have used this material to analyze trends in heat illness, accident locations, and seasonal variation. Privacy regulations limit public access. Medical records, personal identifiers, and family communications are protected. Even when incidents receive national media coverage, official releases remain brief. This policy is intended to balance transparency with legal and ethical obligations. Public reporting systems are also used for real-time updates. During large rescues or evacuations, the park posts status information on its website and social media channels. These updates focus on trail closures, access restrictions, and service disruptions rather than individual conditions. After-action reviews are conducted internally for major incidents. These reviews examine coordination, equipment use, and decision-making processes. Recommendations may lead to revised procedures or additional training. Summaries of these reviews are not typically released. Over time, incident records form a cumulative reference. Patterns emerge in location, season, and cause. These patterns inform staffing plans, educational materials, and infrastructure investments. However, they are presented publicly in general terms. The reporting system emphasizes consistency. Similar incidents are documented using the same templates and terminology. This allows comparisons across years and regions. It also ensures that data can be shared among federal land management agencies. Visitors encounter the results of this system indirectly. Safety brochures, trailhead warnings, and ranger talks often reference past incidents in broad terms. Specific cases are rarely named. The focus remains on general conditions rather than individual stories. Through these records and releases, the corridor's risks are documented in a restrained format. Information is preserved, categorized, and summarized. The system functions as both an operational tool and a public reference, reflecting how accidents and emergencies are formally recorded. If you enjoyed this, support the channel by liking and subscribing, share this with a friend, and tell us what we should explore next. Stay safe, and thanks for watching.